welcome back the gentlemen from North Country Cinema, Kyle, Alexander, and Cameron. And I believe Kyle has some more people he wants to introduce as well.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we have some other people that were involved in the film. The lovely Alana Hawley, who played Jill. And we have some of the musicians as well. We have Gavin Gardner from The Wooden Sky, and Dan Mangan is here to join us as well. So come on out.
I believe they're videotaping this, so hopefully everyone signed their waiver. Where to begin? I want to, because we saw your three pieces of work so quickly and in succession, and you do use some of the same actors as well, but one thing that really struck me was just the faces that kind of, show themselves in your films. And these people, they're almost, you feel their characters before they even say a word. And maybe you can talk about the casting process that's gone on to kind of build this kind of stable of actors that you guys use.
Sure. Well, all of our pieces are character-driven, so it's obviously very important to find the right person for the job. For The Valley Below, we did several audition dates across Alberta and in Calgary and Edmonton and even some of the smaller towns as well. And for me, it's really more about, you can read the lines, okay, you did a good reading, but auditions are very uncomfortable, I find. I think probably for actors as well as us, It's a very strange scenario having someone read lines across the table. So I found it more interesting after we'd sort of narrowed it down to actually just have more of a conversation and find, hey, can we work together? Because then you can build this more comfortable environment and kind of go from there as opposed to just trying to nail it in the audition. Do you have anything to add to that?
I think if you find the right person for the part, then you don't really have to do any work. So.
Yeah, and the independent filmmaking scene in Calgary is actually quite small. Most of the actors are in town to play bit parts in Heartland and Hell on Wheels, so there's a lot of big beards and long hair, so kind of when you find a good actor there, you really like to stick with them and kind of right around them sometimes. Joe Perry, who played the scumbag boyfriend in segment 1, is also in Sandy's film, O'Brazen Age, and I made a film with Joe as well. And so yeah, it's just like you want to work with people that you like, but you also want to work with people that you know are going to be really good.
There's, this being your first feature, obviously there was a process going from shorts to features, and there's certain segments in the film that are also about these kind of characters process, and I think the taxidermy or even the ice rink, there's like a certain, I don't know, like tranquil majesty to the ice rink that I didn't think could actually be committed to screen anymore. And was that part of going through the process of going from shorts to features, that it kind of maybe exhibits itself in kind of these actions the characters go through as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for example, with that, all of these professions are sort of what they do in their private lives. It is very introverted. All these jobs with the taxidermy, driving the Zamboni, these are very introverted jobs. And I think that really for me, I made a short called Not Far From the Abattoir in 2011, which actually told the Warren and Ada story, I guess 5 years before where they're at now when they first met. And it was such a great process, just sort of abandoning all things technical, really. We shot it all handheld and most of this handheld as well, and just focusing on the performance and just letting it breathe. Having those moments where you can just, you don't have to show the most dramatic part of the scene, or you can just let things happen. That all came from the short for me. So I just moved that over to the feature when I was writing it.
Yeah. I think also, like, if you want to make I think that part of Kyle's interest in some of the professions or some of the stuff that's featured in the film, for instance the taxidermy, I think that just comes from a really honest place because he likes taxidermy. So it's like, well, let's learn about taxidermy. Let's see what it's like to and I think that if as a filmmaker, you're genuinely interested in your subject matter, and that's part of like, I think making good movies. You know, if you're interested in the same way that you were interested in things when you're a kid, and you're kind of excited to learn about that and excited to engage with whatever that task or way of life or personality is, then you're creating you're creating the possibility, I guess, of a kind of genuine engagement where the audience is going to be able to kind of relate to that and get into the story, I think, also.
I just have something to say.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note that at least what I took from it is that Gordon's constantly trying to dress up something that's dead. And that's like his marriage, his life is dead, and he's always kind of painting a picture on it. And then Warren's always trying to clean up a mess, and that's what he's doing on the ice. And I don't know if that was intentional, but that was totally what I took from it. So,
do we have any questions up here in the crowd? Right there, sir.
What draws you to doing a narrative where you have so many different parts?
A few reasons, I think. One of them, when I knew that I was going to be writing a feature, I mean, this is something I'd been putting off for so long, because I'm like, oh my God, how long is that? It's got to be like 100 pages. Oh man, I haven't even written that many in university. So for me, well, it's true. And so I kind of thought, okay, well, what if I've written shorts and I've produced shorts for X amount of dollars, so what if I kind of just did that 4 times to sort of trick myself into writing it? But honestly, I couldn't settle on one particular character. Like I wanted to explore as many different people as possible. I didn't want to have one performance have more screen time or stand out. I really wanted it to be an ensemble cast, because that's, I guess, once again, where my interest lies, and yeah, that's sort of where it ended up.
And I think that also in other mediums, this is a very common thing, maybe much more so than it is in cinema. I mean, nobody faults Alice Munro for writing a book of short stories, which she's done very famously for her entire career. And I think that it's so easy to fall into kind of conventions in narrative cinema in particular, where we have a very systematic way of making movies, and the audiences are very familiar with certain patterns. And I think that this is kind of, I guess, partly an attempt just to sort of break that up and say, well, why can't you make a film this way? And is that any less interesting than focusing on one story?
In the back row of the first section, that'd be in the hat,
Oh,
the chapeau.
me? Oh, okay. Hi. I'm just mostly basing off of what he just asked. Is that honestly why the casting took? You kind of went through a little bit more thorough casting process, because obviously the actors were fantastic, and to do a story like a film that way, you need to have fantastic actors to keep it extremely engaging. Were you a little bit nervous because you didn't do, like plot point 1, plot point 2, but?
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, I knew that we had to find the right people for these roles, because yeah, it's written that way. It is all about the character. We're sort of shining the spotlight on performance, and digging deeper into these people's lives and just picking out the subtleties. So yeah, that was I nervous? Maybe at first, but then as soon as I met everyone, and it just kind of made sense. It clicked when I'd find the right person. It's like, yeah, that's definitely the right person for the role, like Alana, for example. So it became very comfortable once that process was done, right? Because we had done the search to find the people that we needed.
Cool.
So.
Did the characters come from people you knew, or did they all come from your imagination?
They're mainly from my imagination. I think we all know some people like this, very, but they're not specifically based on a single person that I would have met. I think it's just, over the years, kind of having visited small towns, and the people you meet, you kind of take it all in, and they're bits and pieces of everybody that I've met, maybe.
this hand back here as well.
How did the different narrative segments get the seasons that they got?
Yeah, it was deliberate. I mean, you know, for example, like the summer scene, it's this sort of really sun-drenched, warm kind of feeling. These young couple who have, you know, that feeling of first being in love, that kind of thing. So that suited summer, and then, you know, with the taxidermist, just this like bleak, cold. So yeah, they were catered or paired with the characters.
Is there anything that like surprised out of those different scenarios? Like once you got into the making of the film with the photography, I guess, or anything?
Well, I guess the only thing that was a bit of a surprise was when we had to shoot spring, and it was like full-blown winter. In November, we're like, how are we gonna get this snow to melt? And then I realized, like, wait a second, this is Alberta. We don't get spring. It happens like at the end of May, so it was kind of fitting anyway that spring was still winter.
Should we use this as a chance to segue about talking about the music?
Well, I just have an anecdote about that, actually. So when I first went out for a coffee with Gavin and started talking about the project, and I said, we're getting 4 different people on board, and for each one to do a different section. And I said, well, we kind of thought of you for the alcoholic musician section. He said, well, you don't need to say alcoholic musician, just say musician, and it's understood. I said, all right, well, what do you think about that section? And then he said, well, but what about this taxidermy section? Like, that actually sounds maybe a little bit more interesting to me. So do you actually want to just say something about that?
Because the music was sort of paired as well to each of the seasons. So why don't you guys?
Yeah, sure. Well, when these guys first sent me the script, I think what really drew me to the script itself was that it didn't seem to sensationalize things. It focused on sort of the drama of everyday life, and that's how I like to look at storytelling and songwriting. I sort of see them having some parallels. So there wasn't this feeling of like this dramatic, moment where there was an epiphany, really. It was just like people going about their everyday life and how they orbit around one another. That's kind of what drew me to the project. I don't know if that really talks about the music that much, but.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting how they wanted to pair each segment of the film with a different person, and I think I was the last one that you guys came to, and I have known Gavin for years, and I've known Ray for years, and I've known Eamon by reputation for years, so it was sort of a no-brainer. It was like, oh, I like all these other people, so can't be that bad. And it was really nice, actually, because I feel like I don't often have a couple hours to just sit and watch a film alone, and I got the email from them like right before a ferry ride, and I was alone on the ferry, and I had my headphones on, and it was weird because when I watched it, there was no music. It was an early cut. And it's amazing, this is the first time I've seen it with all the music, and I was really blown away by how it changed a lot of these moments, and I thought all the other musicians just did a great job. And it's interesting how, even though at least as far as I know, people hadn't heard each other's work, how there's a through line. Like there's actually a real sense of, I don't know, like a continuity between the music, even though it's kind of all coming from a different place. And yeah, I don't know.
Well, there sort of seems to be a pacing. I mean, I'm sure that's deliberate with the editing process as well, and I think the music really kind of matched that quite well, I thought. Yeah, if I do say so myself.
No, I think it's interesting that you say that because when I watched the film the first time, the opening 30 minutes, like the editing and kind of just propulsive momentum it builds to carry the story is just really, really sublime. And I think that these guys were saying, Dan, that you ended up recording your score, I think, in a day and a half or 2 days. And it's really, really fast. And I can almost see, because there is like a very kind of, and maybe not a musicality, but there is a strong rhythm to the film and the cuts. And it must have been very inspiring almost just to see that.
It was, yeah, I'm like ridiculously slow songwriter. Like it takes me like 4 months to finish a song sometimes. And it was really interesting. I was really touched by the film, and I kind of immediately had this line in my head repeating, and it was just, I want a couple things I don't know how to ask for. And I felt like every character in the film had this idea of what life was gonna be like once they finally got their shit together, and nobody could ever ask for it or ask themselves the honest questions they were afraid of the answers to. And so that is immediately, as soon as I had the film, I had like a tagline for the song. And it was really neat because I had just come off of another project and I was really burnt out in the studio, and I was like, I don't know if I can take this on, and it all happened like in a day. It was kind of, it was really nice for me actually to kind of go back to a really sort of just go with your gut every second, and in an afternoon the song kind of came together, and I was really happy with it, and we actually just released it. I thought that maybe they'd be pissed with me for releasing the song as well, but they're not. They're not pissed.
We're happy.
You can buy it on iTunes.
Maybe you could speak to working with Kyle on set and just how he works with actors with an ensemble piece like this. And obviously there's still another character to come in terms of the music as well. But just what was your experience on set?
Actually, when we first did the world premiere at TIFF, it kind of said it all because the entire cast was there beside Kyle. And that just speaks to the magnitude of what an amazing director he is. As you can tell, the film, he really let us just be. And he trusted his actors explicitly, and he created a family. Kyle was so neat. When we first met, he was kind of telling me about his directing style. And he said he insisted on the cast living together under the same roof while we were filming and having dinner tonight, the cast and crew, every night eating dinner together. And he would even cook it and supply the wine. And he created a family. And I feel like when I watch this film, you can feel those connections come through the screen. He's one of a kind.
Well, I believe Sandy had said, there are certain conventional ways to tell stories that you're not particularly interested in. And maybe it's just a good time to touch upon, the North Country cinema, if there is kind of a guiding principle of how you guys want to make films. You mentioned character-driven, but say when, Cameron comes to you with a movie about drag racing in rural Alberta, what are some of the conversations that occur beyond that point?
Well, we've known each other for a while. They've known each other longer than I have, but right from the get-go, my relationship with these guys has been brutal honesty for the right reasons, in a way, and just to kind of ask the questions to make sure that the movie that you're making is the movie that is the best possible version of that movie. So working together, we don't really have a lot of specific notes, but a lot of questions just to make sure that the other people aren't, being lazy or not thinking through certain decisions. And so I think the guiding principle, they can talk more about that. I only joined about 5 years ago. They started it, 7 to 8 years ago, 10 years ago. And I think it's to make personal films, character-driven and just kind of auteur-driven, because it's always the same writer-director and always a pretty distinct vision. But I'll pass the mic along so these guys can talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, I guess the most important thing for us is just, not wanting to make movies that have already been made. I think that making movies that are like movies that you like is not really good enough for me. So I think that that's sort of priority number one, is just to contribute to the conversation, or at least just to contextualize your work in a way that's meaningful to you and where you come from and your personal history. And I think that's why, I think Kyle's done a really good job of making films about Alberta and about people maybe that he kind of grew up around, or that he somehow feels an affinity with. So so I guess that's a priority for us. And we like new wave cinemas, European cinema of the 60s, and we like American cinema of the 70s, and I think that we're pretty proud of our influences. But I think definitely coming from a tradition that is more interested in innovation and personal storytelling than in creating entertainment. That said, one thing that we forgot to do at the start that I'm just going to nail right now is we wanted to thank Telefilm Canada, because Kyle's film and my film would not be possible without these guys taking a huge leap of faith and giving us some money when all we've done is make a few shorts. So I would like to thank them right now.
I think we've been neglecting hands for a while, so right in the middle there.
Sure, well, dinosaurs? No, I had shot pretty much all of my short films in Drumheller. It was a very comfortable place. We got to know the locals. It was our go-to place, really. And as far as setting it there, well, it's extremely unique, not only visually, but just that the history of the valley. You know, you have this whole dinosaur science thing. You also have a creationist museum. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things. There's ghost towns. There's a prison on top of the hill. It just, every time I would go to Drumheller, the creative juices just start to flow, and I think of a million different ideas for different projects. So it was kind of it was a go-to for me.
We were just reading some stories from former inmates from the Drumheller institution on the internet today, because we're working on a new project that's also sort of set in the valley, and holy shit, like, just, I mean, I guess any place that you go to where you just constantly feel surprised by something, and whether that's, you know, the natural beauty of the landscape juxtaposed with like a shitty fucking dinosaur statue that's like so campy and horrible, but there's something about that kind of a juxtaposition that just keeps you coming back. I don't know. I mean, I guess that's the stuff that keeps us interested, right?
Plus, they're still really excited about movies there. Like, they're really happy to have you around, and no one's rolling their eyes or trying to kick you out or charging you a heap of money to shoot there. And it's so beautiful. It's just built-in production value with those hoodoos. There's nothing like them. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
So, how did you decide upon, like, what did you develop the editing style of the movie where you would do sort of like the abrupt cutting? And it's like a style I've seen. I don't know where I've seen it. I'm just trying to think of where I've seen it before, and I wondered if you were emulating something else with it.
No, not really. I mean, a lot of it had to do with the way the scenes were written as well. It's more of these just slices. It's really about, we're going to show this moment, and it might not be the most important or dramatic moment in somebody's life, but you know, you might be able to get a lot of information by something very simple, or cutting the scene off earlier as opposed to letting it play out, or jumping in later, you know, things like that. Really just keeping this almost like cinema verite style of just these slices of life and these moments for these characters.
Sorry, just going back to music. I noted, like, Eamon McGrath. How involved was he, and how involved were you guys? Like, did you split it up? And who did sound design, or was it just like some people wrote music and you guys put it all together? Did you guys collaborate?
Well, the way these guys set it up basically was sort of one musician per section. The collaboration from my end of it was I mixed the other projects, so Eamon came to me with a bunch of the pieces and I put them together. Yeah. And then you guys actually kind of picked and chose which moments you wanted to use for which scenes, so that was collaborative in that sense too.
But yeah, Gavin produced all the music basically. I mean, they would send him sort of like the raw stuff. And
so sound design and the people who actually produced the music was separate?
A lot of the like actual sound design, I mean, there's not that much sound design. There's the music elements, and then everything else, all of that sort of the realistic, you know, whether it's Foley or putting the sounds of trucks going by or whatever, I kind of did that. So.
Cool. Good job.
Thank you.
Well done.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah, we were running out of money, so.
No, you did great. You did fantastic.
I thought, I was saying this on the ride over to the film today, my favorite moment of the sound design was the sound of the lights in the taxidermy scene. And for me, I kind of based a lot of the music that I wrote for that scene around that, knowing that, hoping that would be part of it, actually. I don't know, it was just something so engaging and told so much about the sort of scenario.
I fucking hate those lights.
And there's also a freezer in there, so it's like a combo of the lights and the freezer. Yeah, and when we were actually in the, when we were mixing in the studio, and the guy who was mixing it said, okay, well, we got to get rid of this. You know, you don't want this, right? Like, we can EQ this out. I said, no way. That's staying. That is totally staying.
Okay, so again, kind of with like the editing style and stuff, when you had such small snippets, and you just kind of had your actors like doing whatever was kind of coming, I guess, how did you ask for like a certain kind of a feeling from each one of those small little sections, or what?
Well, I think we play the scene out, even if there wasn't any dialogue. I mean, I always like to make sure that there's enough on the head and enough on the tail of a scene, so that that moment that I'm looking for, it's not just like, okay, and action, you know, just do this, right? I mean, we want to be able to have a little bit, like on the head, a little bit on the tail, in order to make it seem natural, because it's kind of hard if you want to get just one specific moment with maybe one line of dialogue or no dialogue to just be like, okay, and just make sure that that's real and truthful, right? So, you know, there was a lot of conversations about that. Do you want to?
Yeah, to add to that, I know that the film, well, I feel like it has kind of an improvisational quality to it, but it's not. I mean, 90% of the film is scripted. Kyle wrote it that way. So it was really interesting because we actually rehearsed it to a T with a lot of time and detail in each of those moments. So it's really neat to watch it because although it reads like it's kind of off the cuff a lot of the time, it's really from his brain and really beat to beat to beat, thought out and rehearsed even.
Do we have any more questions in the crowd? You guys have talked about how you like to employ the auteur theory, and obviously with telefilm's micro budget, you know, they're kind of giving opportunity to some new voices in Canadian cinema. Do you feel like this is a time to be excited about Canadian film and kind of some of the voices that are emerging, thanks to these opportunities with technology and also funding agencies and such?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was asked a few times in interviews out in Toronto, you know, who in Canadian cinema is inspiring you right now? And I'm kind of going, well, actually, it's, you know, it's my peers and the people that I'm meeting at film festivals, and you know, the shorts that I'm seeing. And I feel like because of technology and because, you know, I think we've always kind of felt that there is way more, like English Canadian cinema can be as fruitful and good as Quebecois cinema, because there's a lot of great work that's coming out of Quebec, because they have it's a system that's been in place for a long time. So funding and everything. So there's a lot of talent that comes out of there, but there's tons in English Canada as well. And I feel like we're finally getting there, and I'm looking around and I'm seeing a lot of really cool work, and I'm going, you know, us, like we are, this is it. Like we could stand a chance here to really put Canada on the map, and I truly believe that with a lot of the talent. Do you feel the same way?
Oh, for sure. I mean, this year more than any other year in recent memory, it's like you can go to a festival and, you know, see a bunch. Like we saw a bunch of Canadian movies at TIFF, and it's like, yeah, that was good, and that was also really good. And we're not talking about Adam McGowan and David Cronenberg. Like those guys are not even in our conversation anymore. Like, not to say they're not doing good work, but there's people kind of in our peer group where, you know, who have kind of come up making shorts and made, you know, 1 or 2 features, and it's like, yeah, I'm totally telling people to go see those movies, and yeah.
Well, what I really like about the Telefilm Micro-Budget program is it's giving the really hardworking indie guys a chance to prove themselves. And I've noticed that a lot of the projects funded under there, people are going to work their ass off to make sure that A, the movie's finished, and B, that it's as good as it can be. I don't want to point out any other people, but the Astron 6 boys here, their film, The Editor, was very good, and it was funded under the same program. And it's just very exciting to see fresh, young, original voices, and not kind of the staunchy, more bureaucratic voices that we're getting.
When's your film?
When is it?
Yeah.
4 o'clock today. 4 o'clock today.
Well, go find yourself a time machine and go see the film.
You can also play midnight last night if you do get the time machine.
But yeah, I was noticing a lot before these new funding programs were announced that, you know, the films kind of fell into a pattern where it was just kind of lazy, paint by numbers filmmaking, and I just really like the opportunity that a lot of young, fresh guys are getting with this new fund. So thanks, Telefilm.
Well, thank you guys for making the film and being in Vancouver, being great guests. The film plays again on Tuesday, so if you knew people who can make it out tonight, or you should tell people to make it out on Tuesday, because I think you all agree it's well worth seeing. And thank everyone who's on stage right now.